Hi everyone, this is Mahmoud Sheikh, and in today's video I will discuss about the important concept which is system calls. Okay, so let us try to understand this concept of system calls in this way. Okay, so suppose there is a user and that user is using the system, and when any user using the system, that user might be performing many activities. The user might be reading any file information, a user might be deleting files, a user might be updating some data, a user might be listening to music, okay, a user might be watching movies, a user might be taking print with the help of a printer, a user might be scanning some documents. Okay, so a user might be performing many activities when that user using the system. Okay, so when the user will be using the system, the user will be accessing many resources of the computer, and those resources includes files, keyboard, scanner, printer, monitor, hard disk. Okay, so user will be using some programs to access these resources. Okay, and user cannot directly access these resources of computer. For user program to access these resources, their program needs to make a system call to the kernel of the operating system. Okay, so what we understood with this, that a user, when user is using the system, he may be performing many tasks or activities on the various resources of the computer. If the user wants to access any of the resources of the computer, he cannot directly access these resources. For that program to access these resources, the program needs to first make a system call to the kernel of the operating system. Then kernel of the operating system will grant the permission to that program to access that resource. Okay, so a call which has been made by the program to the operating system for accessing any of the devices of computer system is called as system call. Okay, so that system call is acts as an interface to the services provided by the operating system. Here in this case, whatever example I told you, the services which are provided by the operating system is allowing the user to access various resources of the computer. Okay, so this was the service which was provided by the operating system, and if my program wants to access these resources, if my program wants to use this service, then my program needs to make a system call to the kernel of the operating system, and then operating system will grant me the permission. Then only I can access the resources of computer. Okay, so for for a program to access any of the resources or device of the computer, first it needs to make a system call to the operating system, then only it can access these resources. Okay, so now I hope you understood what is a system call. So now let us try to understand with the help of these points. Okay, system calls provide an interface to the services made available by an operating system. So in our last videos we have seen various services of operating system, which are program execution, input output operations, file system manipulation, communication, accounting, error detection, resource allocation, and protecting the system. Okay, so these were the various services which we have seen in our last videos. If my program wants to use these services, then my program needs to make a system call to the operating system, then only I can access these services. Okay, so now system calls provide me an interface to the services made available by an operating system. Next point, system call allows a process or running program to place a request to the operating system. Suppose there is a running program and that running program wants to access any resource, then before getting a chance of accessing that resource, it needs to make a system call to the operating system, then only I can get the permission to access that resource. Next point, system calls are tiny program modules or subroutines written in C or C++ programming language. Okay, so these are the small program modules which are written in C or C++ programming language. System call is a programmatic way in which a computer program requests a service from the kernel of the operating system. Okay, so as I already told you that it's a programmatic way with which my program can make a request to the kernel for getting the resources of the computer. Next point, kernel is the central part of the operating system. Okay, so it's a central part of the operating system which manages all the resources of the computer. A computer user never interacts with the kernel. Okay, so a user who will be using the programs to interact with these resources, that user never going to interact with the kernel, as I have told, it will be a central part of the operating system. So a user uses the programs to interact with the resources of the computer, and that program can be run either in two modes. One is the user mode and another one is the kernel mode. When the program is in the user mode, that program cannot directly interact with the resources of the computer. It cannot directly access the resources of the computer. For that program to access resources of the computer, it needs to make a context switch from the user mode to the kernel mode by making an appropriate system call. Once the system call is made from the user mode to the kernel mode, now kernel will grant the permission for that program to access the desired resource, again sending a system call back to the program. Okay, and now program can access the resources of the computer. Okay, so every time when a program wants to access any resources of the computer, it needs to send a system call from the user mode to the kernel mode. Okay, so every time when it wants any resource, it needs to make a context switch from the user mode to the kernel mode. Okay, and then kernel approves to his request, and then the program will get the permission to access the resource. Okay, so these are the two modes in which a program can run inside a system. Okay, now let's move to the next point. System calls are used to create process, abort or end process, debug program errors, send or receive messages, request or release a device, open or close a file, so on. Okay, as I have told you at the very beginning of this video, that system calls are used for creating a process, aborting or terminating from a process, debug a program errors. Okay, if I want to send or receive any message, then first I need to make a system call to the kernel. If I want to allocate, if I want to request any device, or if I want to release that device, first I need to make a system call to the operating system. If I want to open any file or read the information of any file, or if I want to close that file, then again I need to first make a system call to the kernel, then I will get the permission to perform these operations. Okay, so various activities among operating system components will be communicated and coordinated through invoking system calls. Okay, so various activities of components of the operating system will be communicated and coordinated through the use of system calls. Okay, so there will be various components of the operating system, and these components will communicate with each other, and these components coordinate with each other by invoking system calls to the operating system. Okay, so this is everything about the concept of system call. Okay, so system calls acts as an interface with which we can make use of the services offered by the operating system. Okay, so I hope you understood the concept of system calls. So in this video we have discussed everything about system calls, and that's all for this video. If you like this video, click on like button, share it with your friends, and don't forget to subscribe to our channel, and thanks for watching.